Detroit Den 313, Detroit Lions fans, welcome back. Stephen Will here. We got another episode for you. We are unfortunately at that time in the Lions season where we have to start thinking draft. We have to start thinking this isn't a mock draft, but we're going to talk about a couple kids that are positions of needs, some people who could really help us. But before we get into it, hit that subscribe button. Will, we know that the corner, yeah, there's Will's girthy pen. For those of you who have missed that, that thing could kill a person. It's a small bat. We can agree that the cornerback position is probably a top two position of need for this team, correct?
100%, without a doubt.
Would you say it's the number one need?
In a passing league, I can't call it number one, man, because I think that you can make average corners look good if you got a pass rush. I'll say two, though, for sure.
Okay. So we're going to talk about a couple kids. One's pretty local from Toledo, Kenyan Mitchell, and another kid from Clemson, Nate Wiggins. Let's talk about the local kid, Quinyon Mitchell, first. He's been absolutely lighting it up. I've seen a lot of stuff about him going on at the Senior Bowl. He's been D'ing up Roman Wilson, a kid we're very familiar with as Michigan football fans. Roman Wilson, I will say this, and I've been on record saying this, in this draft, I will take Roman Wilson's hands over anyone. And Kenyan Mitchell is looking pretty solid against him. I'm not saying Roman's an elite route runner. He doesn't have elite athleticism, but he's really holding his own against a Big Ten top receiver. How do you feel about him?
Well, first things first, I would be remiss if I didn't shout out Coach Parker out of River Rouge, because he has done a number with these corners out there in Toledo just in general, and just a little high school guy like me getting that opportunity out there from River Rouge, actually from the junior program up to River Rouge High School, up to now getting called up to the University of Toledo, being a defensive back coach. So I got an opportunity to hang out with him a couple weeks ago, and he is an absolute monster. So great job, first rounder. That being said, I watched the film on him, man, just a little bit, guys. This is our glance. This is just us, just doing some light digging. We're not getting into those Mel Kiper, you know what I'm saying, ranges yet, where we know what color underwear they wear. But yeah, man, he's a monster, man. He's physical. He can do everything you need to do at the cornerback position. I see him having a solid career. I don't know if he's gonna be Sauce Gardner.
That's what I was just about to say. You come from the MAC, that's what a lot of people are going to expect in the first round.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be a Sauce Gardner, but I think he's going to be one of those guys that you put over there at cornerback too, and you just forget about him. He just does his job.
You just stole my next question. Do you think he comes, if the Detroit Lions draft him, is he cornerback 2? Cam Sutton still CB1? You don't see any shifting around?
Well, I think definitely if Detroit Lions drafted him, I think he comes in and he plays. I think whoever they draft comes in and plays cornerback 2. Now, will they graduate to a cornerback 1 by the end of the season? But I think there's no reason why he couldn't. He can do everything that he needs to do. But I don't think he'll be one of those guys where the number one receivers from opposite teams are just getting locked down every week. I think he'll just be, I shouldn't even say just, I think he'll be solid. He'll be solid. He'll be a solid guy. You won't see him just getting flame broiled like a Whopper, but I wouldn't be looking for him to just hold down the side of the football field.
You're not putting him on an island, is what you're saying.
No, there's only a handful of guys. Those are like generational talents, man. Those don't come every night. So it's no shade to him at all. He's a great football player.
So he's nothing like a Darrelle Revis, a Sauce Gardner, a Steve Perkins. He's not one of those type of physical lockdown.
Like, it's like, to me, if I'm in all seriousness, if I'm grading these guys, it's like Steve Perkins, Deion Sanders, Revis Island, you know what I mean? Like Gilmore, like, you know, that's Champ Bailey's of the world.
I'll dust Coach Prime.
Maybe right now he's only got 1 foot. What are we talking about?
I don't know. Kenyan Mitchell, 6 foot, 196 pounds, out of Florida. From the very little digging I've done, and what got me onto this kid was stuff I saw on Twitter from the Senior Bowl. I'm like, all right, I've heard the name from Toledo. I went to a Toledo football game this year, and I remember hearing the name a few times. He didn't make anything like dramatic plays or nothing game changing, but I heard his name. Started seeing some stuff on Twitter from the Senior Bowl. Did, like you said, very light digging. We haven't fully dove in. We don't have 40 times or grades or anything, but we're talking about guys that the Detroit Lions have a realistic shot at drafting. We can't talk about, in my opinion, a Kool-Aid McKinstry or a Cooper DeJean. Those guys are going to be in the top 15, I think. So I've seen Quinyon Mitchell draft as early as 20, I think, to Green Bay. So I think in that 20 range, we might have to move up a little, but he could also slide. So what I've seen from him, from the very little I've watched, is 2 YouTube videos breaking down his technique. In both videos, completely different people use the term relentless in coverage. And I think that's a type of player we need after watching Cam Sutton just get his pants pulled down the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season. So I don't know. I like the kid, but I'm not sure I'm ready to take him number 1 for the Detroit Lions at pick 29.
Yeah, to me, it's just a matter of who's there. Last year, I would have never told you when we were doing our pre-draft stuff. We talked about Devon Witherspoon, who everybody in the world was talking about, but I came on and said my number 2 was Brian Branch. So, and then he ends up going in the second round. Lord, thank you again. But I don't know how that happened. But there's always these guys, man, that slip for whatever reason, and it could be because of teams' needs that are ahead of us and whatever, so who knows who slips. There's like 8 corners that I'm kind of like, I
Deep
think
corner
are,
draft this year.
yeah, I think it's like those guys are kind of in the same area of player, so it's a matter of what you like. And we never know who might slip, man, and who might be down there.
There's only really, like, right now as it sits today, the first thing that I have is a question mark about competition. Toledo, Mac School, who's he really locking down? He's not going against a Marvin Harrison Jr. He's not playing in the Pac-12 where he's going against Roma Dunze and all those Washington receivers. Like, he's going against Mac schools. Do you think that that's something to be a concern? Because I know Sauce Gardner from Cincinnati, and that's going to be the comparison I think we're going to hear with Mac schools all season is Kenyan Mitchell, Mac, Sauce Gardner. That's my concern is Sauce Gardner was absolutely locked down. Like,
Yep.
no question about it. Played in the Final Four against Bama and was locking receivers down from Alabama. So that's kind of where he really started to blow up, where people said, all right, I think, yeah, this kid probably could have been a number 1 pick regardless of what school he went to.
Yeah, man. I think that you always got to take competition into consideration. I think that's why Dan Campbell talks about it so much, having our backups, our 2s, our 3s, our practice squad, guys who can compete. Iron sharpens iron. So if you're going out every Saturday and you're facing a dog, I think it does matter. But with that being said, we also are at a level of athletics where kids that are coming up in high schools now have athletic trainers. You and I were in school. It wasn't normal for middle school kids to have these QB coaches and be going to these sports improvement facilities and all of that. So that being said, when these guys are getting to these upper echelon, they're going to the draft ready places to get prepared. And you're going to be able to see what these guys get in and out of breaks like, what their hips are like, what these 40 times are like. You're going to be able to combine that against the film. So I think we will get a kind of a good gauge of what he can and can't do, but the ultimate polish will be on the football field. So to answer your question, we don't know until he plays.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Nate Wiggins from Clemson. I've watched a little bit more tape on him. A little bit. I liked his game. He played against Florida State, and he held his own against Keon Coleman from Florida State, who's another potential top, probably 15 pick, maybe top 10. 6'2", 185 pounds, out of Georgia. A little bit bigger. I think he kind of, his physique looks a little bit to me like, I'll try to keep this comparison to Detroit Lions fans. He kind of is built like a little Iffy Melifonwu in a way. To me, same size, bigger-ish kind of corner. But how do you feel about him?
So early, it's still early, but he gave me those warm and fuzzy feelings when I went through, and I'll be honest, because it doesn't need to be a secret, guys. What I do, especially in the beginning of this thing, I go through and I look at the top 25 guys. Then I go watch film on the top 25 guys. Then I'll look at who gives me warm and fuzzies, who does something to me. You know, when you're listening to music and somebody just hits your soul, I look for that on that tape. Like who's doing something, who's got me like, ooh. And then I'll take those guys and I'll start digging. I'll make a list and I'll start really digging into them. Nate was a guy that gave me that warm and fuzzy feeling. And he looks like he can do everything on a football field at first glance. For me, what do I want a cornerback to do? I want him to cover. He can do that. He's long and rangy, so he can match up with some of these taller NFL receivers. But there's one reason and one reason alone that I think that he fits the Detroit Lions.
Grit.
It's yes, his grit, but his relentlessness, there's one play, and guys, please take the opportunity to go watch this play. They're playing against North Carolina. They're down 7-0 in the first quarter. It's about the end of the first quarter, and Carolina catches a pass, and they're en route to score a touchdown. There's two Clemson players ahead of him. He runs by his two teammates, runs the guy down from behind, rips the ball out at the goal line, and forces a fumble. He didn't even have to get in on that play. He hauled butt to run this guy down. It shows his relentless nature. And then also you see him blitzing off the edge like our Brian Branches, like our Iffy Melifonwus. So the guy can blitz. He plays zone and breaks on the ball. He plays man-to-man. He seems to have the right attitude at first glance. Physically, he matches up. He looks like a Detroit Lion to me at first glance.
From the very little I've seen, all that's great. I agree 100%. What I noticed is in coverage, the highlights I looked up were his pass breakups and interceptions. On every single pass breakup this season in 2023, what I noticed was his eyes are locked onto the quarterback. Mm-hmm. He's backpedaling. He's not out of position. He's staring down the quarterback. He's still defending. And as soon as that quarterback drops that shoulder to get ready to throw, boom, I'm breaking on whatever receiver I'm covering. Pass breakup, interception. He had a pick six against FAU, I believe. I could be wrong on that, but I like how he uses his eyes. A lot of times when we watch corners, what do? They're playing the receiver and not the ball. And if you look at what kind of burnt Cam Sutton, was playing the receiver and not the ball a couple times, especially in big moments, I think. So I really like his eyes. And I'm not saying I want to stare into him until I fall asleep, but what he does on the football field with his eyes.
Yeah, man. He plays great, man. I got no complaints on him, man. Like if I did, it would be getting super technical, but he has a way of overcoming bad technique. And I think that, at the NFL level, they're not going to let you play with bad technique unless, like I said, you're a Sauce Gardner or somebody that where your head pops up and you're in bad positions, but you still lock your guy down. So they just leave you alone.
So, guys, we've talked about two kids. We've only talked about two. We're not going to do every single corner in the draft. We'll be here till Columbus Day. Nobody has time for that. So what you can count on seeing from us for the next probably at least two months is we're going to be doing a lot of shows on guys who fit the Detroit Lions need, whether it's defensive end, offensive guard, corner, safety, maybe some wide receivers. We're going to be talking about at least one kid almost per show, unless something else comes up. We're going to be doing a lot of breakdowns, probably do a mock draft before the combine.
For sure.
What we don't like to do is mock draft people to death. We're not going to post a mock draft once a week. We do one before the combine, after the combine, the day before the draft, final draft. We do 3. So if you're looking for mock drafts, this isn't it. We're just kind of talking about some kids who fit the need. Like I said, there's some kids out there that are probably better. Detroit's going to have to move up to get them. We just don't see them being in our pick range. That's all.
You know what I'm excited for this year?
To win a Super Bowl and not get your heart broken in the NFC Championship against the 49ers and blow a 17-point lead.
Yes, and something else. Can we just get it a little closer on these mock drafts? I feel don't get me wrong. I feel like we did some good things this year, but that Jahmyr Gibbs, man,
we talked about every single player drafted. We just drafted them in different positions, honestly.
Besides Broderick.
Yeah, like come on. I have some coworkers who get a better pass rush than Broderick. But we talked about Jahmyr Gibbs. Yeah. We talked about Jack Campbell. We talked about Brian Branch heavily. We drafted them in our mock drafts, some of them. We just didn't have them in the right order, but it doesn't matter. We got them regardless, so it doesn't really matter.
No doubt.
So hit that like button, leave a comment down below, drop a name or 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll take a little note of it of who to talk about next. But again, if you drop like a Caleb Williams, like, come on, guys, we're not picking number 1. Probably not going to happen. Marvin Harrison, like, try to keep it in the range of where Detroit could be picking. Or if you think he's really going to fall, maybe we'll look into it. But leave a comment down below. Hit that like button. If you're new to this channel, hit that subscribe button, guys. You don't want to miss Will's girthy pen every single episode.
All right.